Hey everyone, it's FamilyJewel7X. Yay! It's me again. This week we're gonna talk about EQing or equalizing. Yeah, I'm not too happy about this. Why? Because EQing is a bitch, and it's always kind of a bitch. So the first thing I want to say in this video is that don't think about EQing as an effect, okay? Even though it is technically an effect, if you think about EQing as an effect, like a phaser or something, you're not thinking about it the right way. What EQing really does is it balances out the frequencies that we're going to be using in our song. And we're going to be using what we downloaded last week, which is the Spectrum Analyzer. This is going to be very, very helpful. I've done nothing to this mix that I didn't do last week, so it's still the same. Right? Okay. So, we added some reverb and shit like that, and we're going to backtrack, turn those off, and we're going to EQ all of these tracks, or EQ the tracks that need to be EQ'd. Some people actually don't like to EQ some tracks, but I mean, you know, it doesn't hurt. I mean, as long as you're doing it right, because EQing could really hurt your mix. But just remember to EQ, you know, minimally, not too much. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put 2 links in the description of 2 images that work as EQ cheat sheets. And use these. I mean, it's not really cheating if, you know, you're learning. It's kind of like, you know, you're in a math class and your textbook is kind of like your cheat book. I mean, it's telling you how to do all this stuff before you actually learn how to do it. So, you know, it's a very good resource to use one of these cheat sheets before you learn how to use it. I've been doing this so long that I've kind of memorized what everything does, which you will too if you do, you know, it as much as I do. All right, so the first link is going to be one that's a little more colorful than the other one, and that's the one I want you guys to use more because it's easier to follow and a better, you know, resource to learn how to do this stuff. The other one is getting more in detail of, you know, what each frequency does. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh my God, EQing is so hard, you know, how do you do it, you know, blah, 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 blah. And the one trap I find a lot of people who do this, who've never taken a class in it or anything, is they try to think inside out. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to work outside in. So let's take a look at the spectrum. So let's play it from right here and let's analyze the analyzer. So this probably looks like, you know, whatever. It looks like one of those iTunes fucking like do things, which is probably what you call it, do things. Let's look at what these frequencies do. Notice how when I move my mouse across this, it changes right here. What the first number is the frequency, and what the second number is how, you know, at which decibel I'm at, and that's vertical. The other one's horizontal. And just like, you know, how we have bass, rhythm, lead, we're going kind of like reading a book, left to right. I mean, if you're American or not Japanese. I don't know. I don't know which countries do that. Leave me a comment. Tell me what the fuck countries do that, because I don't know. I always found it interesting. All right, so how does these things work? All right, so over here, you know, you got bass. I mean, that's easy to remember, right? This whole fucking section right here is your bass. And that's pretty much from 0, which is right, like, or well, actually, since the human ear can't really hear 0 hertz, the human ear can only hear starting at 20. So 0 to 20, you're not really going to hear. And even after 20, you know, most people can't really hear that. It's more felt, you know what I mean? Like when you're listening to it, it's more like the subwoofer is making that feeling. All that stuff is the low frequencies down here. And as you go up, you know, bass and mids, these are your mids. This is where your rhythm guitars are going to end up. And then over here is your trebles. You know, that's where your lead guitars are going to end up. I mean, that's not crazy, is it? I mean, so what do we learn? Bass, middle, treble. And where do those start? You know, bass can go anywhere up to like, I don't know, like 300, I don't know, 300, Everything up to that, up to like, 1K, 2K, 3K. This is pretty much your mids. And then up here is treble. Now this is gridded. I'll tell you what these, what these big sections are, because that's actually quite helpful too, in a minute. But now let's break this down. So now we know that there's bass, mids, treble. Now each of these have kind of like a subdivision, right? So let's work again left to right. So in the bass we have a sub bass, which is anywhere from 20 to about 40 hertz. Now this is a pretty big section for only like 20 hertz. Then you have your bass band, which is all the way up to 160 right here. That's right here. And then 160 to 300 is your upper bass band. Now what's a band? A band is kind of like when you're altering frequencies, you're not actually, dealing with just that frequency by itself. I mean, you are if if your band is really, really small. But usually what a band does, it's kind of like, imagine there's like a bridge going from here up to here, up to here. So then we talked about mids. Now, how do the mids get divided? Mids get divided mostly, low mids, which start about 300. I'm actually not sure. Hold on, whatever. I'm pretty sure, your upper bass band is actually technically your mids, but I mean, I don't really think of it like that. You got your low mids, which start at about, 300 and get up to about like 800 or 900. And then after that, you've got your actual mid-range, and that's all the way from 800 to 2.5 thousand. And that's like from here to like, somewhere around here, all this area right here. Then you've got upper mid band. Sorry. You can see that there are a lot of divisions for the mids, but that's because the mids are very important. I mean, that's the middle. That's what's the most apparent about your mix. And then your trebles is that's the kind of stuff that's going to come out of the tweeters on your speakers. Those are the little circles if you've got monitors. You've got your high frequency, which is 5 to 10,000 hertz, and then your ultra high frequencies, which is just all noise, and that's from like 10,000 to 20,000. Now it seems like a lot now, but let's break that down actually. Let's go. Okay, so we've got bass, mids, trebles, right? Let's think about sub bass, bass, low mids, high mids, trebles. Now that's a good starting point to figuring out what what's going on. And to show you that in example, so let's look over here. This is the trebles. Now what do you think is going to be on the trebles? That's going to be like your lead guitars, right? See how leads are actually more over here than, something like the basses. We're breaking this down so that, you can understand it better. EQing is very, very, very in-depth. So, if you guys have any, simple questions that I don't answer in this video, leave a comment. If I don't respond to it, I answered it in this video, and look again. All right, so now let's start putting this into practice. Each of these frequencies, by adjusting them, will alter the sound of it in some way. So let's start with the drums. It's important that you understand what all this stuff does, and I'm sorry if I'm talking really fast. I'm just really interested in this stuff. So we're going to turn off the reverb. Now, the reason we're doing EQ first is because you should always do EQ before compression or any other effects. So notice how we set our EQ here. All right, let's edit. Now, there are three, for the most part, there are actually like 4 different EQs per se that you'll see. I'll show you another one that you might see. You might see something like this. And this is a 7-band EQ, right? So it's a visual EQ, 7-band. I know GarageBand has some like crazy bands, but usually this is all you need. You might see something that looks like this, which is, this is actually so I can alter the frequencies by doing stuff like this, which is very helpful for getting right into there. Like say, if I'm using something like this and I've got like, if I've got like 630 to 2000 hertz, what if I want to adjust the 2, you know what I mean? You are kind of doing it, by turning this down because you're turning down the band. Remember we talked about like a bridge kind of thing, and you're actually turning it down. So even if you're turning down this frequency right here, you're also slightly turning down this one over here. It's actually turning that down a little bit more. And that's what's going to happen if you use an EQ like this. Now another EQ you might see is the EQs on a mixer, which actually, you know, just look like this: high, mid, low. And that is what these little grids are for. Now watch what happens if I'm listening to the drums and I turn down the lows. That's all right here. Let's try mids. That's all right here for the most part. And then treble. And what I'm doing is what is called as cutting frequencies. That's what that's called. You know, turning down bands of frequencies. I wish there was a better way that I could actually let you visualize how a band works. Actually, there is, but you'll see that more in mastering when we start using my mastering software, which is called Isotope Ozone, which is what I'm going to teach you how to use. It's expensive. I'm sorry, but it's good. It's good shit. All right, so let's EQ this bitch. All right, so let's you know, let's just say you didn't get this one. I bought this one because, you know, it's really good. But let's say that all you got is this. So how does this work? Well, say, let's listen to it. You see how we have some shit over here that we don't like? That was what? Let's see. That was like 2,000 onto whatever, like 6,000. That's like 2,000, 6,000, whatever. Let's turn those down gradually and see how that's affecting the sound. We're losing a lot of that, you know, clear cymbal sound, but it's flattening this out because we're turning, you know, down all that sound. So that's pretty much how this works. You're really altering the bands of frequencies. So 630, you're not just altering, you know, this part right here. You're actually altering this part and kind of like over here and kind of like over here, and you're turning down this little hill. All right. So we're not actually going to use that. For the sake of, you know, actually being able to visualize this instrument, we're going to use this one. And how does this one work, you might ask? Well, we're going to activate it, and then we're going to play it. And holy shit, we see it right here. Holy shit, oh my god. How does that work? Magic. All right, so let's start trying to flatten this out so we can get a flat sound across here. So what we're going to do first is we're going to work left to right, but we're going to use, I mentioned this in the tones video, a low shelf. And what a low shelf does is instead of turning down, like if I were to peak, it looks kind of like this or like this, right? A low shelf is like this. It's everything from the bottom and then on. Kind of deal, kind of thing. So what does these thingies do? Well, this is the hertz. You'll notice this is changing as I'm moving it. And you can operate it here too. Now for the drums, you know, your real drums aren't going to start until about like 55, and that's when the thump of your bass drum is going to be prominent. So we're not actually going to need anything past, you know, like 55 for the drums. There is going to be some sound from the bass drum, because when you have an instrument sound, you're actually, you know, especially drums, it's not one single note. It's actually a bunch. So, all right, so we're going to turn this down, and then we're going to use this. This is a Q, I think, on some other EQs, but what this does is this is going to alter the slope. See that? So let's see what this sounds like. We have it pretty much cut here at like 100. So we took out some of the bass. Now what I like to do for this, you might not, is I had a peak thingy here. So we're gonna actually turn this up. I'm gonna lower the slope a little bit. Find where your bass drum is. For Easy Drummer, I notice it's around 55. And to do that, we use what is called as frequency telescoping. So we're gonna mute my low shelf and just have this fucking all the way up. Now, if you listen, you can hear that there's, you know, a really cool sound, and that's resonance is what it's called, I believe. Or good, you know, bass, you know, resonance. Now, the goal to do for this is always to take away before you add shit. You never want your this thing to go above 0. And same thing with the other EQ. You never want to boost any frequencies. I know I'm sort of boosting it here, but that's to get it back to, you know, normal. Remember, this isn't an effect. I mean, you're just balancing these frequencies. You don't want to actually boost frequencies above this because that's going to end up distorting, you know, the natural, good, juicy sound of your instrument. So, you know, I've got a little bit above here, and that's not really going to matter. But for the most part, you want a good, authentic sound and to take away frequencies always before adding them. And you know, you usually, you know, in all of my videos, up to, I don't know, I think ever since, you know, N64 Medleys 2, like I've never boosted a frequency, and you shouldn't either. So, all right, so now that we got our low shelf and we're peaking up where the bass drum is, so we're keeping that bass drum sound and all of that sound that we want, which is right here. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast, just watch this again. I just don't have a whole lot of time. Got shit to do, kid. Now we're going to add a high shelf. We're going to add it over here. And what does that do? Same thing, just reversed, right? So now we're going to turn this up, get the slope so that we keep all these frequencies, but we're chopping off this as much as we need to. And what that sounds like is this. Sounds good, right? No. So we're gonna nudge that over, get it right there. And for all shelving, this is something that a lot of people talk about, and I completely wholeheartedly agree. What you want to do is you want to start the shelf at like all the way over here, and slightly keep moving it until you start to hear an effect. And depending, you might want to like add a bit or like take a bit. I don't know. All right, so let's, you know, try that. Right about there should work. All right, now let's see what these two guys could do. Let's set, you know, green's already at peaking right here. You know, set all these to whatever. Now let's, you know, take a look at the sheets I gave you on doing this because they can really help. Now, you know, this is all your fullness, but this frequency right here, all of this bass frequencies can get really muddy really fast. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to try to cut some of that so that it doesn't get too cluttered later in the mix, because bass is going to be eating up all this shit right here. We don't want the drums to be fucking with that, so. Notice how we still have the bass we want, but, you know, we're losing all of this fullness. That's okay. That fullness is going to be, you know, given back through the bass guitar. Now, remember what I said about this part? If you lower like 500, you add a little bit more presence. And the reason for that is all your presence is right here. You're taking away the stuff that's fucking with the presence frequencies, and that's the stuff around it. So by taking away this stuff, you're making this part more prominent, thus making presence more prominent. Very subtle, not too much. Also, I've noticed with my mixes at least that these frequencies get really cluttered too. And that stuff is really annoying. That stuff is all of the really, really like, you know, it's where our ears are sensitive and shit. So we actually turn that down a bit. So we're going to turn that down around like 3,000. 3,000 should do it. And then right about there, and then right about, let's just make it so that we still have all these frequencies. You want as much frequency as you can. What you'll notice is if you turn all these down, I mean, what's going to happen is you're really just turning the volume down. I mean, and that's no good. So another way of going about finding the frequencies that you don't want and that you want to cut is to do, you know, as I said before, telescoping. So what we can do is we can take this and start going up like this and kind of sweep across and find frequencies that fucking suck. So let's try that again. Sounds kind of cool. Yeah, these ones suck, so let's turn this down. Alright, so now you'll notice that we've got a lot of trebles going on over here. Let's see if we can remedy that at all. What we can do is we can turn this down a little bit, and then turn down the slope. Very subtle. We still want the, you know, full sound of the instrument. So let's actually turn up this slope right here. And then to compensate, let's push this down a little bit more. So now a good idea is to turn off the EQ and see if what you did is actually helping. So now we're losing a little clarity with the snare drum. That's usually the high part of the snare drum is right here, which is what we've inevitably cut. So let's just push this over a little bit and then turn up the slope, kind of like right there. See, it already sounds kind of good. All right, and see, after what we've done is now we've got a pretty flat frequency response. So that's all we're gonna do with the drums. And remember, don't copy what I'm doing. I mean, you know, all drums are gonna sound different, you know what I mean? So this is not gonna work on a drum set. I mean, it could, but it's probably not because all drums are different. All right, so we've successfully EQ'd our drums. Fuck yeah. Now the next step we would take is compressing, but I'm gonna explain that in another video. So let's turn on the reverb and see how it sounds. And what the compressor is going to do is it's going to make that like so much punchier, and you'll see next week. All right, so we've got that. Now let's look at the bass. EQing bass sucks. I won't lie to you guys. So now, you know, obviously we're not going to EQ the bass the same way we did the drums, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out what frequencies we need, right? So in my tones video, you know, we made sure that we're not getting any frequencies that we don't need. I remember I told you guys to turn this down around here, and that's going to clear it up so that it's not so muddy. And if you didn't, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a lot of like spiking frequencies up here, depending on your bass and depending on your tone, whatever. But so let's look at this. Might be a trouble spot when I hit the bass when I do a quick slap. Doesn't look to be too much of a problem. So now we want the bass to sound really clear and not just like a bunch of fucking muddy bullshit. Now what you might want to do is do a low shelf depending, but I actually don't do a low shelf. Since the bass is going to be taking up these frequencies right here, I actually don't add too much of a low shelf. I want those frequencies to be the foundation of the song. So let's, but we do want to get all of this muddiness out. So let's listen to it. All this sound is our mud, but it's also our fullness, remember? So you don't want to take it all out. So let's give a peak. Turn it down. It's slightly turning down the volume, but I mean, we can turn up the volume later and we're gonna have a clearer bass afterwards. So let's hear that and try to get a good slope. See how we have treble frequencies, treble E, more mids, I guess. That's all the finger noise and stuff. That's gonna be nice and authentic. So we don't wanna alter those at all since they're already pretty low. Now we're gonna take our greenie here. We're gonna peak. I like to also add a little bit more presence by taking away some anti-presence. We're gonna call the 500 anti-presence. It's like 400, same difference. All right, so let's hear how that sounds. So let's hear that with the drums. Now you might say that it sounds better without the EQ, but that's because, you know, like, it's just a volume decrease. We can turn up the volume now if we need to, so. So now let's take a look at the rhythm guitars. Now, the luxury of EQing clean instruments like drums and bass is that you're not dealing with so many frequencies. We're dealing with a really broad range of frequencies here. I mean, you're gonna want to EQ those out. So let's take a look at our EQ for the rhythm guitar. All right, so what I like to do is start with a low shelf. Edit the slope. I wouldn't way too fucking far with that. Notice how where I put it, the bass frequencies that are, you know, heard when I turn it off aren't really essential. But around here, there's usually some really good, you know, rhythm guitar resonance. So I'm going to give a peak, turn down the slope. I'm going to turn it up to right about there so that it's hitting that, right? So now let's mute the low shelf. I'm getting some good resonance right here. So let's turn back on, let's turn the shelf back on. And then we're going to turn the shelf a little bit farther this way. And then turn the slope up so that we have a little bit more. And a little bit more. Okay. I mean, this is all heard stuff. I mean, I've been doing this for, you know, about a year now, like weekly. So, I mean, I'm learning these techniques. I could be doing these all wrong, and that's where you guys should tell me, hey, Family Jewel 7X, you dink, you should do this better. But for right now, this is what works for me. So, yeah, we've got a good bassy rhythm. We don't want too much bass because that's going to interfere with our bass guitar. You know, I've noticed a lot of people comment on videos saying like, oh, hey, you know, you need to turn the bass up, blah, 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 on some other people's videos. But in reality, like, you know, some people actually like to mix the bass in with the rhythm guitars to kind of create like a super rhythm. I don't know, but like, you know, that's usually what the problem is. Your rhythm frequencies are, you know, impeding on the bass frequencies. And to fix that, you're going to do this kind of thing. Now, your bass is going to be all right here. So let's, you know, I'll show you that when we're done EQing the rhythm guitar. So now we're going to do a high shelf because there is a lot of, you know, guitar noise that we're not going to want in the rhythm guitar because that's going to start getting all fucked up with the lead guitar. So, and that's taming the sound. I'm sorry it's all coming out of one ear. You might actually want to center it. It might be a little bit easier to mix. But I have found that the trebles are a little bit weird when you pan them. I'm actually not sure why that happens. Maybe one of you guys know. It feels like you're getting a lot more treble when you pan it over to one side. I'm not sure why that works. All right, so the next thing you want to do is once you have a pretty, you know, good treble, a good high shelf, and a good low shelf, you want to start editing some of this shit. Now, everything above here is all like air sound. It's all guitar noise when you're distorting guitars. It's all just random shit. So you want to start finding the frequencies that you don't want over here. Now, one thing you can do is learn what all these frequencies do, but that's boring. So we're going to actually use the telescoping methods. Now, notice we have a lot of bass going on over here as opposed to this. The lead guitars are actually going to fill up all that area. So remember that Try to think of rhythms as taking up this whole kind of foundation. It's going to pick up everything from here, this broad range. Bass is going to be all over here. Leads are going to be all the fucking over here. Drums are same thing as the rhythm. It's going to be taking up a broad range of EQ. Leads are the biggest bitch to EQ. Notice we're doing that last in this video. All right, so let's just take a look at them. Oh, see, look, I fell into my solo trap, just like I told you guys not to do. All right, so we're gonna solo the lead guitars. We're not gonna need any of this shit, and we're not gonna need any of this shit. So let's open up our EQ. Awesome, awesome EQ. Yes, yes, all of the EQ covered in spit. We're gonna low shelf it. Blah blah blah. Yeah, fuck yeah. Notice I went really far with that. That's because we're going to kind of do the same thing as we did with the other rhythm guitar EQ. And I'm going to compensate some of that, you know, bass frequency. But we really don't need, you know, this stuff. It's, you know, this is all mids and stuff that, I mean, you do want mids. Mids is a great way to keep your lead sounding really warm. I love mids, but I mean, this stuff is actually, you don't really need it too much. You want to find the good resonant sound here and then shelve off all this stuff so that you still have these frequencies, but and some of the bass, but they're not as prominent as the frequencies that you need. Notice when I'm playing low notes, we're getting a lot of stuff down here. You know, we don't really want too much of that because it's going to start masking some of this shit. So let's set a high shelf. Fuck yeah, high shelf. Now we want to be quite liberal about how much treble we're using in this because nothing else should be using those frequencies. We're leaving all the treble room for the leads and the hi-hats on the drums. Notice how all the sound that is, you know, you're hearing now is all guitar sound, like just crap. You want to get to a point where you don't hear any of that shit. So right there's about good. I mean, I hope this is all making sense to you. So now, you know, what would we do? We would do telescoping because we're too lazy to learn what all this shit does. Ow. See what I mean? Like all this stuff in the 3000 is really sensitive if you turn those up. Those build up, so usually you want to get rid of those. Also notice how I'm keeping all of this mid area. I mean, that's good shit. And if you feel like the mids are really, you know, overpowering, then we can unslope some of this, or slope it rather. And that sounded pretty good. Maybe we can add a little bit more presence. Get some of these mids out of here. Like low mids. Very subtle. I mean, you know, we might as well give him something to do so he isn't forever alone. Like I said, I'm not a professional. This is just all the stuff I do. Now notice how we have pretty flat here. We got some bass shit. Let's get rid of that. You know, I'm doing this pretty quickly. Sorry about that. Leads should take you a long time to get the perfect sound. So let's hear how that sounds, you know, as opposed to, you know, what we did before. It's definitely helping to my ears. So, all right, let's add this to all the other tracks. All right, so I added the lead, you know, EQ to all of the lead tracks. Now let's hear how they sound all together with themselves. You know, a little crazy right now, but when we start adding all this stuff, it's gonna really be, you know, contrast to everything, so it's gonna sound fine. You know, EQ really is a balance. It's not an effect. You know, you're balancing out all these EQs so everything can be heard clearly. It's a lot of work, but, you know, it's really what separates the amateur stuff from, you know, professional sounding stuff. So, all right. You might realize that, you know, a lot of your volume is gone now. But you'll also realize that we have actually isolated a lot of these frequencies. We've just taken the frequencies that we need and pretty much cut out all the stuff we don't. So now let's hear how everything sounds together. Oh, the bass is really prominent. Let's actually turn that down. Sorry, 55. I know, it sounds pretty good right now. You know, there aren't a lot of trebles, but I like it that way. You know, all this stuff is pretty empty, as you can see. All right, but, you know, when we start pushing volume, we're actually never going to push the volume here, but you'll notice that we're going to get a lot of that stuff. See that? You got to think ahead, man. It really saves your ass. Yeah, I'm sorry this video is so long. There's just so much to talk about. All right, so now that we've got all our tracks EQ'd, now remember, you know, I added the same EQ to all my leads. In certain situations, you might, you know, say that the bass is really, really strong. You might want to actually have a separate EQ for the leads that work there. So say you have just kind of like an underlying like lead rhythm sort of thing. You're going to EQ that differently. You're going to add more, you know, bass frequencies than treble frequencies in a way. I mean, you know, I'm trying to think if I, you know, left anything out that makes this tutorial hard to understand, because EQing is probably one of the most difficult to understand out of all of these things. EQing is something that, you know, you should do, but if you're doing it wrong, it's gonna really make your stuff sound like shit. So, I mean, you know, this is something that I'm trying to tell you everything that, you know, will be helpful for, you know, learning how to do this stuff. It's going to take some practice. It's going to take some failures. You know what I mean? It's all trial and error, just like everything that has to do with recording and mixing and stuff. So, I mean, don't be discouraged. Just keep working at it, and eventually you'll get it. Learn about, you know, what areas these things do, and fucking what, you know, frequencies are doing what, and, you know, if you turn something down, what that's going to do to the sound. And remembering that, you know, what turning down a frequency on one instrument is going to sound different on another, even though you're affecting the same frequencies. I mean, you know, there's a lot of stuff to think about, but, I mean, if you use the cheat sheets I gave you, I use those learning too. But unfortunately, a lot of tutorials on YouTube make this stuff out to be really, really difficult to understand. And my goal in this video is to make it easier, because, I mean, I know when I was trying to learn how to do this stuff, I was completely lost. I had no idea what was going on. So I'm hoping that I have been able to make it a little bit more clearer. Like I said, it's a balance. Where you're turning up a lot of bass frequencies in your leads, you're going to start losing some clarity in your rhythm guitars. Same thing, rhythm guitars, you start adding a lot of trebles, you're going to fuck with the leads, a lot of bass, you're going to fuck with the bass. And think of it as your ideal situation is to be able to isolate all of these instruments. It's not going to happen because distorted guitars and stuff tend to fuck everything. But, I mean, that's usually the ideal way that I think about going through this. So, yeah, I think I covered everything. Next week, we're going to start compressing this shit, and it's going to sound a lot punchier. Right now, it kind of sounds like bleh. It sounds like, oh yeah, reverby and whatever, but once we start adding compression and doing that right, you know, it's gonna start sounding professional and sounding like a real song. So I think that's about it. I'm going to get going, and I hope you guys have fun EQing this shit and rage quitting. So I will speak to you guys next week. Have a, you know, awesome Friday and weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday for a cover, and I'll see you on Thursday so that we can compress this bullshit.